Well, first off, the pieces coming together was a quote directly from J.P. Crawford. That wasn't just my own writing. J.P. Crawford was very excited to add all these new players to that Reading roster, and he's very excited about the way that the future could look for the Phillies. I got a chance to look at Nick Williams and Jake Thompson last night, two of the main players involved in the Cole Hamels trade. Both had very impressive debuts. Both were highly regarded prospects within the Texas organization, and you could see why last night. I do think that all told, all across the board, when you add up the players the Phillies got for Ben Revere, two relievers who have upside, throwing mid to high 90s, I'm not really sold on the guy the Phillies got back for Jonathan Papelbon. He looks like a back-end rotation piece, but certainly these top guys involved in the Rangers trade look like they could be making a significant impact for the Phillies in the next handful of years, whether it's Jorge Alfaro, the catcher, Nick Williams, the center fielder, or Jake Thompson, who pitched 7 innings of one-run ball last night against the Trenton Thunder.
Yeah, and obviously now Alfaro was kind of the main piece in that deal. He won't play, and a lot of people would say, well, they didn't get the number 1 or number 2 guy in the Rangers system. Looking back now and seeing the other pieces, is this 6 for 2 better than getting their 1 or number 2?
Right. Well, that was a question I was asking when the trade first came out. Was like, okay, so if the Phillies did get Joey Gallo or Nomar Mazara, one of the top 2 prospects for the Rangers, they wouldn't have gotten as much depth. It would have been like a Gallo plus maybe one other player, or Mazara plus one other player. What the Phillies did with this trade was they gave themselves the wiggle room that if 1 or 2 of these guys don't pan out, there still should be enough else to pull from that trade. I will say, though, that I talked to Nick Williams last night, and he made a comment that he figured he was going to be traded just because he knew the Rangers needed pitching and that their farm system was, quote, loaded. And that's exactly what it was. I mean, you look at that Rangers system, it was so deep that Odubel Herrera, for example, was just let go for nothing. Made available in the Rule 5 draft, and the Phillies picked him up, and he's looked like a bona fide major leaguer, maybe not a starter, but at least a fourth outfielder. But I do think they did well in this trade. I see Nick Williams as a guy who has a lot of upside. I kind of look at him like a Michael Brantley type. He has a lot of bat speed. That's his main skill, his attribute that scouts have always touted him for is his bat speed. And I talked to him last night about his developing plate discipline. He's walked a lot more, and he's a guy who looks like he can bat at the top of the order, but also capable of giving you like 15 to 20 home runs per year. He had his best at bat last night didn't even result in a hit. It was a deep line out to the wall in the opposite field. And he also showed the ability to hit left-handed pitching as a left-handed hitter.
Yeah, and Nick Williams is an outfielder. They also end up getting Jake Thompson, who you saw throw. And, where do people project him? I mean, because you've given up Hamels, the top of the rotation guy. You see a couple pitchers back in return. What are the pitchers, who of the pitchers kind of should excite Phillies fans?
Well, Jared Eichhoff is another guy who was brought over in the Hamels deal, and he also made his debut in the Phillies organization last night. He pitched very well at AAA. I think it was 6 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. I saw Thompson up close. He pitched 7 innings, gave up the 1 run. He only had 1 strikeout, which is probably raises an alarm for people just looking at the box score. But all the contact made against Jake Thompson last night was soft. He allowed 6 hits, only got into trouble in 1 inning, and it was based on bloops. 14 of the 21 outs that he got were on the ground. I mean, there were 3 double plays, some humpback liners, some infield flies. He's throwing 94 to 95 miles per hour with fastball, also showed a slider and curveball. And he looks like he could be a mid-rotation guy, maybe a number 3. Tall pitcher, coming from a downward plane, and he looks like he has a heavy ball that generates ground balls. He said that's kind of been his M.O. And I asked him if there were any nerves pitching last night, and his response was no, because he's already been through this before. Jake Thompson was traded from the Tigers to the Rangers last season at the deadline, so he has a little bit of that experience already.
Yeah, and I guess, the Phillies are looking to restock. They did it with 3 different deals. Overall, you look at is it Ruben Amaro Jr.? Was he the guy making these deals? Whoever it was, a week later now, do you look back and say, you know what? The Phillies, have they expedited the process at all, in your opinion? I mean, have they maybe gained some ground on getting back to respectability?
I think so. I mean, when you kind of project what the 2017 lineup might look like, J.P. Crawford's a stud. I mean, that was, to me, the thing that stood out the most seeing these guys last night is just that J.P. Crawford is on a different level defensively than everybody else on the field. He's that good. Like, he would be impressive defensively in the major leagues right now at shortstop if he were there. But I mean, you have Crawford at shortstop, Franco at third base long term, it looks like. Whether it's Cesar Hernandez or maybe Scott Kingery, the second-round pick who projects long term at second base. And then between Nick Williams, maybe a guy like Aaron Altera in the outfield, Roman Quinn when he gets back healthy. You have two catchers who have offensive tools in Andrew Knapp, who's hitting .372 at Reading, and Jorge Alfaro. There's a lot of pieces here in place. I'm not saying all of them are going to pan out. I don't want to paint this eternally optimistic picture of it, but even if all of them don't pan out, the Phillies still look like they're building a nice core for the future, and all these guys are going to have the ability to grow together, which is also very important.
Corey Seidman, CSNPhilly.com with us here, 97.3 ESPN. Taking a look back, the Hamels trade. I was on vacation, too, so I didn't get a chance to really get a lot of analysis on some of these guys. And, one of the interesting things, too, is how about the Papelbon deal, which I guess, they thought, a lot of people thought maybe they wouldn't get anything significant. Is that going to be someone that may end up actually helping them out?
Well, Nick Pivetta was kind of like a second-tier prospect in the Nationals organization. I think he was ranked maybe their 9th or 10th best guy by one of the outlets, whether it was Baseball America or MLB.com. He walked a lot of guys in his Reading debut, kind of got rocked. Jury's out on him. He's another guy who doesn't have a ton of experience at AA, but the Phillies stockpiled these power arms. He throws in the mid-90s, and I think they're just hoping that if you get enough power arms, stockpile enough of them, that a few of them are going to hit. His upside is not number 1, number 2, or anything like that. But, I mean, there's some value in getting league average pitchers or guys who can just give you a 4.15 ERA over 170 innings. I mean, we're seeing that firsthand this season as the Phillies have tried out Jerome Williams every 5th day and all those starts early in the season to Sean O'Sullivan. So, yeah, I mean, I see that with Papelbon, anything you got for him was going to be a plus because you also have to consider they were clearing that $13 million salary next year off the books, which may allow them to pursue a worthwhile free agent.
Hey, Ruben Amaro Jr., Corey said, this was as well prepared as we've been. I know we just kind of brushed over about who made the deal, but is there any indication, is Ruben here? Are there people looking at him and saying, Ruben did a great job and maybe he saved himself? Does this smell like a Gillick deal or a McPhail deal, or is that a little murky?
It is a little murky. I mean, I think that all three of them had their hands on it. To me, just based on the deal that Ruben Amaro's made in the past, it didn't seem like it was an Amaro deal. But that could have, he said at the press conference for Hamels that he learned from his mistakes. He learned from getting players who were in high A with the Cliff Lee trade, with Omot, Gillies, and Ramirez, that you need to get guys who are closer to the bigs because there's less, risk of failure. And I've been asked a lot by people over the last week to 10 days, has Ruben Amaro been able to save his job with this trade? And that's an interesting question because, there's the one hand, we just talked about all the guys the Phillies could be looking at who can grow together. So maybe there's the opportunity for Ruben Amaro to see this whole thing through, see this rebuild through. And if my prediction today would be that at the end of the season, the Phillies kind of figure out a role. They carve out a role for Ruben Amaro that sounds like it's a promotion. I'm not saying I have any inside information or anything. This is just what I assume is going to happen, that they're going to figure out some kind of promotion for him that moves him into like a Howie Roseman type of role where it's a better title and maybe more pay, but less hand-to-hand, less of the day-to-day stuff. Because I do think Andy McPhail is going to want to bring in his own guys that can kind of see through his vision. But I will say Ruben Amaro did. If he was the one who was behind these trades, he set the Phillies up nicely. He set Andy McPhail up nicely for the next few years because they've hoarded some prospects. They have a legitimate 15-deep group of prospects right now.
Yeah, and something that you haven't heard from the Phillies, Corey, a lot in a comment the other day. I think it was Gillick or maybe it was Amaro when they brought up the word analytics. It's not something you hear a lot, but he said the addition of the analytics portion of these evaluations put us in the best position to be ready. I guess this question will never be answered, or I was on vacation, so I don't know if it was. But the Astros and the Phillies, do we know whatever happened with that deal? Do we know who was included in that deal, or is that something that we'll never know? And Cole wasn't going to go there anyway.
The only name that's been widely reported that we not know for sure, but has been widely reported to have been out there in that offer was Domingo Santana, the former Phillies prospect, the outfielder. I would assume that some of the other pieces involved in that Astros-Phillies negotiation were some of the guys the Astros traded to Milwaukee for Carlos Gomez, Josh Hader, a left-handed pitcher, Brett Phillips, an outfielder. I would assume they would have been in on those talks. I also know the Phillies were really high on Kyle Tucker, the younger brother of Preston Tucker. He was drafted in the first round, just a few spots ahead of Cornelius Randolph. so maybe the Phils inquired on him too. But from all accounts, the package that the Astros were willing to offer the Phillies was even more enticing than the Rangers' package, which makes sense because Houston knew that it was going to need to pony up to get Cole Hamels to waive his no-trade clause or do whatever was necessary. But Hamels didn't seem interested in going to Houston. He said that he had criteria, he and his wife had criteria for their new destination, and it went beyond just baseball. And, for whatever reason, he saw the Rangers as a better situation moving forward than the Astros, which I kind of disagree with because when I look at it, Houston has a lot more young talent and upside than Texas does.
Corey, you also got a chance to see Utley. He's going to play tonight in Trenton as well. He thinks he'll be back tomorrow. What will his role be when he returns? Are the Phillies going to have to play him to try to showcase him? Do they owe it to him to play? Are they going to have a very tough situation when he comes back tomorrow?
They're going to showcase him. Yeah, they're going to showcase him because Chase Utley is a guy who could be traded in August. There was my colleague Jim Salzberg of CSNPhilly.com reported last week that the Cubs had mild interest ahead of the deadline in Utley, and I could see that happening in the month of August. I could see the Angels coming after Utley, maybe the Giants, who were dealing with an injury to second baseman Joe Panik. All three of those situations are way better than Philly. I would assume that he would want to waive his no for any of those situations. Utley's going to have to show, though, that he's healthy and somewhat productive for about 10 days to 2 weeks in order for another team to feel comfortable about trading for him. But I think that Pete Maccannon's going to find playing time for him, whether it's second base or first base. Maccannon talked a little bit yesterday about move guys in and out of spots. He'll get Cesar Hernandez some days off. He'll get Freddie Galvis some days off, Ryan Howard some days off, and he'll be able to mix and match in the infield. But I would assume that Utley's going to play almost every day because if he's not playing, you're not going to be able to move him.
Yeah, how does he look? Does he look like I know a lot of people said that ankle was slowing him down, that maybe that found something in his swing because of the ankle. Did you see a different Chase Utley from the one that's hitting 179?
Well, in the seventh inning yesterday, after playing 6 full innings in the field, he went first to third easily on a single to center field. It was vintage Chase Utley the way he was moving on the base paths, so he certainly looked healthy doing that. And he said it was so far so good in terms of his ankle, and there were the indications that the ankle injury was causing mechanical adjustments in his swing that were perhaps leading to the 179 batting average. I'll believe that when I see him improve because the 179, it wasn't just that he was struggling this season. He was struggling all the way back to June 1st of last year, especially in the power department. So I think we'll really need to see over the next 2 weeks. But based on the way that Chase Utley's career has gone and knowing how hot he can get and how hot he can be immediately after coming back from injuries, which we've seen multiple times in the past, I wouldn't be stunned if he comes back and he hits a few homers, this week, starting Thursday, if that is when he comes back, because he did indicate that he could be ready to come as soon as Thursday.
Hey, how about the job Pete Maccannon's done? I know we've talked a lot about, that he's the interim guy, but is he putting himself in position to be a candidate?
I still don't think so. I know the Phillies have played extremely well, 13-3 since the All-Star break, but to me, that is a result of even the manager kind of having nothing to lose. Maccannon said last week to us that he's not managing for a job. He's not auditioning to become a manager, to become a candidate on the list. I'm sure that he'd love to be considered. It would be flattering for the Phillies to think so highly of the job that he did to seriously consider him to be the next manager, but I just don't see it. I think he's probably going to end up being a bench coach somewhere else, and he's a very good baseball man. He's been in this game for decades, and his demeanor has rubbed off positively on the Phillies. Okay, it's in stark contrast to the way Ryan Sandberg was, and we saw Jimmy Rollins criticize Ryan Sandberg's lack of communication yesterday when he came back to Philly, but Maccannon just has everything just more loose. He's an honest guy. He's open. He talks about his players openly. Like when Ryan Sandberg was here, and Dominic Brown or Cody Ashley or any guys like that would be struggling and Sandberg would be asked about it, he would kind of avoid the question. He would avoid answering it and just say, oh, yeah, the balls just aren't falling in for these guys. Maccannon's honest about it. He's straight up about it, saying we need more power out of Brown. We need more offense out of Cody Ashley. And it's just kind of a breath of fresh air after 2+ years of just very generic managerial decisions and comments out of Sandberg.
Yeah, I wonder, I'm not saying this, that they're going to, be 25 games over 500 by the end of his run here, but if the players would have a push to say, look, we want to play for Pete, he's a guy he keeps us loose, would they, could he effectively, in some way, shape, or form from now to the end of the season, put his name at the top, somewhere on that list?
Yeah, maybe, possibly, but you also have to consider that a lot of the players who would be saying that are guys who probably aren't going to be here when the Phillies are a contending team again. I mean, when you look at this team right now, the only guys that stick out that are going to be major parts of the next successful Phillies team are probably Maikel Franco, maybe one of Freddie Galvis or Cesar Hernandez, maybe a guy like Herrera and Ken Giles. I mean, outside of that, there's no player's opinion who should really be valued in the managerial decision, because Andy McPhail is going to want to shape this team the way he wants to shape it and the way that the new GM, if the new GM is brought in, wants to shape it. And I just don't think that is really Pete McCannon. As good a job as he's done, it's just not a situation that was conducive to him really seizing the job.
Corey Seidman, CSNPhilly.com. Which of the guys is closest to helping out the big leagues?
Which of the guys is closest to helping out? Involved in the Hamels trade, or just all the trades, or?
Yeah, I guess the Hamels deal most likely. I mean, they're the one. That's the one that most people look at as, you got 6 guys there. Of those guys, who's the closest to helping out?
Well, the 2 pitchers in AAA, just because the fact that they're at AAA seem like they could be faster risers, like Jared Eichhoff might make it up here by September. In terms of who can make an impact the soonest, I think it's Nick Williams, just because the Phillies have the glaring need in the outfield, and he plays all 3 outfield spots. And if he continues to develop, I mean, he has more power than anybody the Phillies have in their outfield right now. So he, to me, looks like he can make the quickest impact. Jorge Alfaro is still the X factor there. He's probably not going to play again this season, and if he does at all, it would be some instructional league at bats, or maybe in the Gulf Coast League or whatever. But I do think that within the next 2 to 3 years, all of those players involved in the Hamels trade, I'd say all of the players involved in the Hamels trade will be up by 2017.
That would be that would be a win, right? I mean, if you could say that 5 guys came up and were on your big league roster in 2017, that's a win for you, right?
Hey, I mean, as long as they all produce and don't stink,
well,
yeah, it would be. It would be.
If they make it to the big leagues, that would be more than what they got for Lee anyway. I know those guys all had, except for Tyson, got a cup of coffee, but they didn't contribute in any way, shape, or form.
Right. And I mean, I think you can safely say that if half of these guys make it to the big leagues, that would be a better trade than any that Amaro's made in terms of selling in the past. But it's tough to say that it's a win, because Cole Hamels is a borderline ace, and he might get the Rangers to multiple playoff runs. Of course, they're positioned differently than the Phillies are, but no, I think that the depth of the package the Phillies brought back, they got quality and quantity, and it showed last night in Trenton for Reading.
Yeah, good stuff from Corey. Check out at CSNPhilly.com. He has 5 observations on the Phillies' new prospects, and we'll be keeping our eye on these guys because, as Corey said, they could be up here by 2017. And that would be a really good job by whoever made the deal. If you don't like Amaro and he made this deal, well, if they're all up by 2017, you'd have to at least give them some credit for that. Is there any part of you, Corey, that reconsidered having to deal Hamels? Some people said, after he threw the no-hitter, that, well, why don't you just keep him? Maybe they should have just had him and Nola and started to build around those two. Any, at the end, any second thoughts?
No, not. And I have to base that off of the return they got. If the return was weak, I would have said it would have made more sense to hold on to Hamels. But the fact that they were able to really take by bringing in 5 potential big leaguers, I think that was the way to go. Because even if you had Hamels, you wouldn't have had the prospects, and you would have been paying him $24 million a year, which would have prevented you from making other signings, and it just would have created too top-heavy of a roster, even if you had the dreams of optimism in the Phillies contending with Hamels again. I don't think it was possible.
He's Corey Seidman. Follow him on Twitter at Corey Seidman, CSNPhilly.com for more on all the deals the Phillies made. Jimmy Rollins back last night. The Dodgers are in town. Aaron Harang starts for the Phils. Thanks, Corey. It's always a pleasure, bud.